You're listening to Randall's Thoughts on HBCU Pulse Radio.
Yes, so today's Randall's Thoughts, of course, is about Willie Simmons leaving Florida A&M after he won a Celebration Bowl. So first and foremost, the first thing I have to say is congratulations to Willie Simmons for getting this opportunity. Before he got to FAMU, they had 6 straight losing seasons from 2012 to 2017. And FAMU is a storied program, a lot of great history. And in the 2000s, they've had successive winning seasons before Simmons got to Florida A&M. But he turned around that program and made them a national power in his 6 years there. He never had a losing season. The worst record that he had in that time span was 6-5. And that was in 2018. And that is an above 500 record. That is a great building block for the future. And they had successive 9-win seasons. Of course, FAMU, after the pandemic, they make their move to the SWAC. Coach Simmons won every game in the SWAC, but 2. In both of the games that he lost was to Jackson State and Deion Sanders. But folks forget that in 2021, it was a defensive battle, a 7-6 defensive battle that could have gone anybody's way. Arguably one of the better games of the year because FAMU and Jackson State were rather evenly matched. And we thought that 2022 would be a crazy scenario, and it really wasn't. But at the same time, there were some situations with compliance that also precluded FAMU from being full strength in that matchup in the Orange Blossom Classic. Like, he is an amazing coach, and he really revamped and reinvigorated this storied FAMU program. And let's not forget, he developed NFL caliber talent. Of course, Marquise Bell is the first person you think of because he's currently starting on the Dallas Cowboys as a starting linebacker, making things happen, making a big play almost every Sunday, Saturday, Monday, Thursday. Whenever the Cowboys play, Marquise Bell is making it happen. But let's not forget Xavier Smith with the Rams. You have Isaiah Land with the Colts. They got into the NFL too, and they were in that FAMU system. So Willie Simmons deserves everything he's getting. He deserves a pay raise. He deserves to be a Power 5 coach. He deserves to be a Power 5 head coach. He deserves to be considered, when it's all said and done, as one of the best coaches in HBCU history if this is his last opportunity at an HBCU program. But I will say this. My thoughts on him leaving are sort of mixed because I definitely understand why. But at the same time, I wish that HBCU programs were seen as the prize. I know this isn't the 1990s anymore. I know we're in a new situation, a new generation, a new era where these opportunities, they're not as plentiful as they were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when Eddie Robinson was coaching, doing his thing. These opportunities are not plentiful. But at the same time, I just sort of wish that we as a people, as HBCU folks and folks that are not from the HBCU community, but at the same time come to these programs, we see the pride, we see the history, we see the pageantry, and we decide this is my final stop. This is where I want to be. But I think that there are systems in place that are the reason why we don't normally see that. Oftentimes, this is the first thing, oftentimes we don't have the money to keep our talented coaching minds, or just sometimes we're reluctant to pay the money to keep our talented coaching minds. Because I think if you look at this situation, you look at a Coach Simmons that grew up, he said in his HBCU game day interview and in other interviews as well, he grew up on FAMU's campus. He's a Florida boy. And he stayed there for 6 years. He had a running backs coach offer for the University of South Carolina, a Power 5 SEC institution. That was a real offer reported by multiple outlets, including HBCU Game Day. He decided to stay at FAMU instead of leaving at that time. And one of the things he said at that time, we talked about it in the exclusive interview with HBCU Game Day, he wanted to bring a championship to Florida A&M. He wanted a Celebration Bowl. He did what needed to be done. He left respectfully. And now FAMU has to rebuild and find that next person to continue the success that Coach Simmons built in the program. I wish that we had an Eddie Robinson of this generation that's like, you know what? I don't care about the other jobs. I don't care about anything else. My purpose is here, and I want to be here. But I know that's unrealistic because first and foremost, we have to look at the personal motivations of the folks in these positions. And that doesn't mean that, they're wrong for wanting to enrich their lives and their families' lives. They're not wrong for having other aims, such as going to be a Power 5 coach. There's nothing wrong with that, because some folks, this is another thing folks got to figure out. Sometimes folks just want to leave, even at quote unquote regular jobs. You don't stay forever. That's one thing that I learned about myself at HBCU Pulse in building my business. That sometimes, no matter how much you like the person or how much a person or an employee is great, eventually they have their own goals. Your goals for your business, your company, your organization, your program is not the goals of everyone else. You might want to stay there. You might want to build your business. You might want to build your program up. But sometimes folks have their own motivations and their own passions and their own journeys that they want to complete. So Coach Simmons leaving FAMU isn't because, oh, this Power 5 job at this PWI is better than this HBCU. It just made sense for him in his journey. But I do wish that we could see HBCUs as the prize. I wish that we could see coaches that stay like Eddie Robinson stayed, that stayed like some of our great coaches, Pete Richardson, that stayed like some of our coaches stayed. But money is often a factor. Sometimes these coaches want to leave and do something else. But also another thing as well is what went on during the Eddie Robinson years and the Pete Richardson years and the Jake Gaither years and all these other different legendary coaches, Doug Porter at Fort Valley. If you look at it, the landscape of coaching and the expectation of coaches were a little bit different, because Coach Simmons could have 9 winning seasons, could have like some seasons where he went 6-5, like maybe some talent dipped or other things that happened. It's like he just had a couple struggling seasons, still won, went 6-5. People will be ready to fire him because the expectation is different. And the alumni expectation, sometimes the administration's expectation, is that we want wins immediately. And I've said this on HBCU Pulse Radio. I just don't think that that is the right philosophy. I think that you build a program up systemically, and you have to look at it as, hey, we went 6-5. What do we do well? What do we not do well? How can we make changes when we have incremental success, when we get to where we need to be? But a lot of folks look at it and say, hey, like we want to rush to make this happen. We want wins. If you can't provide us wins, you got to go. Can't be quote unquote mid for too long. And I think that puts a lot of undue pressure on these coaches and a lot of these fans. I've talked about it all the time. They have the wrong expectations. So I don't think an Eddie Robinson, a 56-year coach, would be at any program. I think the longest you're going to get, especially if you look at the fact also that Eddie Robinson was younger when he became head coach at Grambling. I think the longest you get is like 20, 25 years, like a Buddy Pugh. I mean, you're going to get about 20 years. I think that's the extent of it because of how the game changes, and there are highs and there are lows, and the fans' expectation is win, and you got to go. We want the next Deion Sanders. We want Ray Lewis. We want Ed Reed. But on that point as well, let's talk about this. A lot of folks are saying, oh, well, Deion Sanders left Jackson State, went to Colorado, and all these HBCU folks were upset. Are y'all going to be upset at Coach Willie Simmons for leaving and becoming the running backs coach at Duke? No. Pretty simple. No, we're not. And we're not hypocrites. Folks that didn't like how that situation went down with Deion Sanders aren't hypocrites. It's two different situations. You look at Coach Deion Sanders, right? Deion Sanders, Jackson State head coach, brought them a lot of success, made a lot of ambitious promises of changing the landscape for HBCU football, for showing talented black athletes that they can go to HBCUs and make it to the league. You don't have to go to Duke. You don't have to go to Colorado. You don't have to go to Alabama and Georgia and Florida State and all these different places. You can go to HBCUs like the legends before and make it. And I'm going to usher in that era. That's what he was saying. He said it was a purpose, a higher calling for why he came to Jackson State. Then he left without truly, in my opinion, completing the mission. He didn't win a Celebration Bowl like Coach Willie Simmons did. The SWAC championship wasn't the ceiling. Making 2 Celebration Bowls and not winning was not the ceiling. If you want to say there's a ceiling, the ceiling is winning the Celebration Bowl. The ceiling is having multiple players drafted. The ceiling is seeing the improvements in Jackson State's program. And we see improvements, but there was more that could have been done. And he had the right to leave, and no one said he didn't. But also the rumors that festered, the talking points that still exist about that program that are totally false, that he allowed to fester. That is the reason why folks were mad at Deion Sanders. seemingly going out of his way to say, hey, Colorado's such a better situation than Jackson State. That was the problem. It wasn't him leaving. It was the situation around him leaving and how it happened. But you have a coach, Willie Simmons, that handled his business, that won the Celebration Bowl. I don't think any FAMU fan is truly upset at Coach Simmons. And I'm a FAMU fan. I'm a FAMU supporter. Like I said, for me, when I look at Florida A&M, it was Florida A&M, it was Howard, it was Fort Valley. Those are my three dream schools. I got a lot of love for FAMU. And I was rooting for FAMU this year, honestly. I was being objective, but I was rooting for FAMU, honestly. So I'm a FAMU fan. I'm a FAMU supporter at this point. I don't think anybody that really truly rocks with FAMU is looking at Coach Simmons in any type of way except congratulations, we are rooting for you at this next level. We're rooting for you in this next position. Because he did it the right way. He finished the job. He won the Celebration Bowl. And they were about to field a very competitive team. Oh, they were about to win the ACC, as some folks said, like Light on Sports on Twitter. He said that, man, Willie Simmons is just trying to build an ACC champion. They were ready to run it back with some talented guys, some FBS guys that came to FAMU to make it happen, to shake it up. That was about to happen. He was ready to run it back. But you get this opportunity where, hey, it's more money. It's aligned with your career path. You want to be a Power 5 coach. There's nothing wrong with that. He did it the right way. Did an exit interview with a black media outlet, with HBCU Game Day. Talked about his motivations, talked about the fact that it isn't personal, left with grace in class, didn't bash the school on the way out. That's the difference. So to act as if there isn't a difference in those situations is, I think, very disingenuous, because oftentimes in life, there's a lot of complexity in situations. And we see that oftentimes in our personal lives. But for some reason, in some topics, in some situations, especially in sports, we don't like to embrace the complexities that life brings us. So all in all, we have to look at this situation as what it is. Coach Simmons is not spurning HBCU life to go to a Power 5 program. He sees it as the logical next step in his career. He brought FAMU back to promise. He brought them to a Celebration Bowl. He rebuilt that program and instilled a winning culture back in a traditional power in HBCU football. Never had a losing season. Put FAMU football back on the map after 6 losing seasons. Built a great game plan and a great structure. Now he's on to the next journey. And I think that that's what folks have to accept and realize, that sometimes folks just want to go. Sometimes folks just want to leave. But I will admit that I wish that at a certain point, we start to see our HBCUs as the prize and as the destination, not a stop on the journey. But I don't castigate anybody for that, because I understand that there are money situations that preclude us. And sometimes folks have their own journeys that they have to walk. And those are my thoughts on today.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to HBCUPulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.